Welcome to MT Mentor, where we fill our cups and share our wisdom together. I am your host, Jennifer Hicks, and I am a board-certified music therapist and licensed educator with over 20 years of experience as a clinician, educator, supervisor, and mentor. You can learn more about me and our MT Mentor podcast and membership group on my website at www.joyfulnoisesllc.com. You can click on the link at the bottom of the homepage to receive a free infographic and periodic updates, including previews of upcoming podcast guests and episodes. It is an honor to welcome our guest mentor for this episode, Tim Ringgold. Tim Ringgold is a board-certified music therapist, columnist, and the author of the book Sonic Recovery: Harness the Power of Music to Stay Sober. He has provided music therapy to thousands of teens and adults in residential treatment and is a sought-after international speaker, having shared the stage with some of the top minds on music, the brain, addiction, and personal development, including Tony Robbins. Tim was the first person to give a TEDx talk on music therapy in 2012. Tim is also a former regional president of the American Music Therapy Association. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Jen. It's great to be here.
I am so excited to get to share even just a little bit of your wisdom with our listeners. So let's start by giving them some background. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about your music therapy journey and the work that you do now?
Sure. So before I was a music therapist, I was a musician like all of us. And I was a mock star, which is a rock star that hasn't made it yet. And the reason I was a mock star was this story. So April 18th, 1995, I am at the local club at a live concert, shouting my head off, jumping up and down. And what I didn't realize, just about 10 minutes away, my 5 best friends had just been murdered. Yeah. And that experience changed my life. I went to 5 funerals in 4 days. And so I'd wake up, bury a friend, get as hammered as possible, pass out, and then wake up and have to do the same thing over again and again and again. And at each one of my friends' funerals, I sang a song that I had written about them to say, it was my way of saying goodbye. And like my community embraced me for how healing it was for them, but it tore me up to do it. Yeah. And then the night of the last funeral, I went to see some live music. And for the first time since I got the news, I found peace. And look, no amount of drugs, alcohol, food, porn, cable TV numbed that pain all week. And I would stack all those behaviors in an effort to just crush and suppress the pain. Yeah. Didn't work. But there I stood in the presence of the Steve Morse and his rhythm section, just like, and I got what my community had been telling me. And so even as a musician, like it was always about like music at the highest moments of my life. And then suddenly music was there at the lowest moment of my life. And that's when I realized, oh, that's what music can do. And so like in that moment, I pretty much dedicated that for the rest of my life, I'm just going to help others reach for music in their toughest times in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. So that kind of planted the seed. And then my dad passed away in hospice 2 years later. And when he died, Enya was playing in the room. And it was like having the voice of angels in the room with him. And I was like, that's so cool. And I thought, like, if there was a way that I could be the soundtrack for someone's transformation from life to afterlife, that would be like the highest use of my God-given gifts as a musician. But I didn't have any clue that there was a structure out there in which I could fulfill that vision. Yeah. So I just had this vision floating. I had this experience, in my past. And then, in the music industry, they say sex, drugs, and rock and roll in that order for a reason. And after 7 years in the industry, finding myself incredibly unhealthy, unfulfilled, unsatisfied, and in a relationship with the woman of my dreams, and it was falling apart. 2 things happened. I walked out of that industry and I walked into recovery for sex addiction. And that was like the turning point where my whole life got better in a hurry. And
Yeah.
in my early in my recovery, the idea of going back to school became relevant. And my wife said, hey, if you want to go back to school, we can afford it. What she was really saying was she didn't want to be married to never was, but it's okay. I bag on her all the time about that. So I went on Arizona State University's website because it was 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
And I scrolled their index of majors from A to Z just to see what would pop. And, I get to music, and there's music education. It's not really my style. And there's like music performance, like musical theater and opera are not my style. I was in a heavy metal band. I wore liquid latex on stage.
Yeah.
No. And I'm also an athlete. And so I had actually been pursuing physical therapy, and I'd worked in physical therapy with the idea of becoming a physical therapist, only to leave that
Ah,
field after a couple of years because it's so protocol based. I got
yeah.
bored, and
Yeah.
it's very tissue based. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to reach the self inside the tissue, and physical therapy doesn't do that. And so suddenly I hit music therapy, those two words. And that's where I discovered the two words. And I was like, stop it. So I click on it because it's a
Yes.
hyperlink, and it's
Yep.
2 paragraphs. Type of work a music therapist does, type of person a music therapist is. First paragraph read like my dream job. Second paragraph read like an autobiography.
Ah.
And I finally found the structure in which I
Mm-hmm.
could fulfill the vision that I had when my dad passed away, and I could utilize music the way that music used me in my
Yeah.
darkest hour.
Yeah.
So that
Oh,
was it.
that's so beautiful. Yeah.
Right then and there. I filled out my application, my FAFSA, and then I promptly failed my audition. And then I got a vocal coach and practiced for a year and failed
Yeah.
again. And so it took me 2 years. But I
Yeah.
drove out to this little school in Southern California called Chapman University. I
Mm-hmm.
got in the car, drove 6 hours for a 1 minute and 50-second audition, and then got in the car and drove back. And I happened to be the right voice part. I sang the right solo for the right conductor at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I got accepted to their music therapy program with a scholarship. And I lived 10 minutes away from Arizona State. And I said to the man upstairs one day, Chapman's 10 times the tuition. I live 10 minutes away from ASU. What are you doing? And no joke, Jen, this is what
Yeah.
he said. And just for those who, if that's like for me in my spiritual background, I lovingly talk about the God of my understanding as the man upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I do not subscribe literally that it's a man upstairs. That's just the phrase I use.
Yes.
Okay. It's
Yep.
more like that inner wisdom, higher self. Pick the noun you want to use, pick the pronouns you want to use. I'm going to say
Mm-hmm.
he, I'm going to call him the man upstairs, but we're all talking about the same thing. He says, listen, when you pull up to a ski slope? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you see the top of the mountain from the bottom? I say, no. He goes, now just imagine me over the top of the whole mountain looking down. He goes, I'm not going to tell you what it looks like going to California because you wouldn't believe me.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have to do is get on the lift
Yeah.
and find out for yourself. So we packed our bags, moved to Southern California on one income, went back to full time in my 30s. Like, how are we going to pull this off? And like the
Yeah.
second week we were here, I'm opening the mail and I get a tax bill from 5 years earlier out of nowhere. No, 7 years earlier out of nowhere.
Oh.
And it's like 700, let's call it $671, which is like $671 I don't have.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. Right. I'm leafing through the mail. Like 2 or 3 envelopes later, I get this weird envelope. I open it up. It's a class action settlement from the University of Phoenix Online, where I worked for a brief period of time in my Clark Kent day job while I was in my band,
Mm-hmm.
for $673.
Wow.
It literally left me like $2 for
Mm-hmm.
Starbucks. And that's when I knew the man upstairs had my back,
Yeah.
and that I could really fully embrace this new future of music therapy
Mm-hmm.
and really just lean in.
Yeah.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Absolutely. Your work as a music therapist in recovery, along with your personal experiences with that, have been particularly helpful for me. Um,
Nice.
and as that is something that brought me to music therapy at the beginning of my journey and is where
Hmm.
I've been working for the last several years, what would you like the students and the professionals who are listening to know about working with other folks in recovery?
Wow. How much time do we have?
And this is the rest of the podcast.
There were a grand total of 2 questions asked, ladies and gentlemen.
And I will refer to the show notes where you will find a link to Tim's book too. So
Yeah, exactly. Like, just go read the book. So a couple of things I want people to know. One is addiction is not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Addiction is a solution.
Yeah. Yep.
People without problems don't get addicted. 80% of grown-ups use mind-altering substances as adults and then spontaneously stop using them after 10 years. That's the
Mm-hmm.
stats, ladies and gentlemen. Most grown-ups use mind-altering substances without any problem.
Yeah.
For some who are struggling with mental health issues, which might fall under an umbrella that include things like trauma,
Mm-hmm.
ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, they are medicating
Mm-hmm.
with behaviors and substances in an effort to solve the either physical, emotional, social, or spiritual pain that they're experiencing
Yeah.
in real time. So they reach for something that works in the moment. And that is the design of the human brain. When the brain
Mm-hmm.
is stressed, it triggers a craving in an attempt to self-soothe. And it
Yeah.
doesn't give a rat's ass whether it's healthy, legal, or socially acceptable, because the part of
Mm-hmm.
the brain that triggers that craving is a very primitive part of our brain that's just dealing with regulation and survival. Doesn't
Yeah.
care. Doesn't care. That's why people who are addicts will find themselves doing things that cause this massive cognitive dissonance in their own lived experience, because they like, I can't believe I'm the guy who
Yeah.
goes to church and then also like watches porn. Like, how can both things be true? How can I
Mm-hmm.
say I love my girlfriend and then cheat on her 20 times?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how can they both be true? That's the cognitive dissonance, because the amygdala that's firing off this signal for whatever works doesn't care.
Yeah.
So when you approach people who are struggling with addiction, what you have to instantly understand is the addiction is simply a symptom. It's just like a cough, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's a red flag that there's something else actually going on underneath, and that's the thing
Mm-hmm.
that we
Yep.
need to be treating. We're not treating the behavior of addiction.
Right.
And make no mistake, addiction is a behavior. We're not addicted to substances. That's not it, because otherwise everyone who drank alcohol would become addicted to alcohol, and they're not. Overwhelmingly, right? 9 out of 10 adults who drink alcohol never have an issue with alcohol. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not the substance. When you hear somebody say it's a highly addictive substance, that is a complete red herring.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the issue. The issue is there is some pain happening inside that person, and they literally don't know any other way to handle the
Yeah.
pain. And so that's what's really going on. So approach these people with great compassion,
Yeah.
because there's a very complex situation happening inside,
Mm-hmm.
of which you can play a vital, pivotal, game-changing role in
Yeah.
their journey out.
Yep.
So it's a very exciting opportunity, and it's very important to know exactly what music can and can't do to
Mm-hmm.
that person and
Yep.
for that person, and teach them how to fish, and teach
Yeah.
them the contraindications of music listening in recovery. Right. So speaking at a
Yes.
conference a couple of years ago in Michigan, and there's a addiction medicine doctor who's kind of famous in the addiction medicine world, named Mark Gold.
Mm-hmm.
Just a pioneer, like, a bazillion textbooks and, papers, just, that guy, right? Just the CV is like, right. So he's sitting there during his plenary keynote, and he's talking about how music triggers cravings. And he tells the story of how they discovered it. And so they were doing some other unrelated study, and the subject that they had hooked up, and forgive me if I might get the details wrong here, like, but the subject, basically they were trying to measure brain activity in like where cravings are fired, when they're fired. And so there's background music playing, and the background music is Clapton's Cocaine.
You're
And so when it
kidding
gets to
me.
the chorus, no, I swear to God, you can't make this stuff up. And it's, I want to say it's like late 70s, early 80s
Yeah.
when they're doing this research. So it's like classic rock is just coming into, so people, that song was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And she don't lie, she don't lie, she don't lie. And then the crowd all sings cocaine. Right. And when you listen to the live track of that song, you hear, 12,000 people in an arena scream cocaine with joy in their hearts. And sure enough, when it would hit the word cocaine, bing, it would trigger a craving for
Yeah.
this particular individual. And so they were just kind of like Viagra was, found out accidentally, as a
Mm-hmm.
side effect of a heart medication. And so they were like, oh, we didn't know that. Right. And it was kind of like
Yeah.
one of those things. Now, I probably got the date of that story completely wrong. So please, people, don't hammer me for that. The most important thing to
Yeah.
take away from that story is not the side effects.
Yes.
Because you have like people who tell stories. It's like, don't trip over the wrong thing, right?
Yes.
Like, what's the important part of this, the message of the story
Mm-hmm.
versus the details. So it probably wasn't the late 70s or early 80s when that was done. I'm just going to say right now, because I'm thinking about what was the technology that they would have been able to see that didn't exist in the late 70s or early 80s. So I just need to like be clear about that. But the point was that
Mm-hmm.
people who are in treatment for addiction will have their party playlist
Mm-hmm.
on their phone, and that party playlist is just the soundtrack of their demise. And so they'll be doing great work all day in groups, and then they'll put their headphones in and trigger a craving at 5:30 in
Yeah.
the evening, and then they'll
Yeah.
wonder why they went out and used, and then they'll beat themselves up for it because it can't
Yeah.
be the music. The music can't be like my music doesn't, ha ha ha, my music
Yeah.
doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So those are just some, couple of things off the cuff.
Yeah, and a couple of really important things too. Thank you for that, Tim. For the listeners here, I first got to know Tim as my coach and my mentor when I started my Joyful Noises business several years ago. And as I've shared with you, your support was truly instrumental for helping me ground my business and my core values, which has been a bigger difference than I could even imagine at that point in time. And a huge difference over the past year as I've pivoted here too, and even started this podcast.
Nice.
And so I'm curious, since you've been such an important mentor for me, who is one of your mentors? Who is someone that has played an important role in your life and career?
I have to give it up probably to the first person that comes to mind is my friend Joe Polish.
Yeah.
So Joe is also somebody in long-term recovery, and he's very open about that. So I'm not outing him. Joe and I met in my second 12-step meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted what he had, which was a
Yeah.
sense of humor in the midst of addiction, because at
Mm,
that moment in my life, there was no room for humor. There was just shame.
yeah.
And he showed me that you could have humor, warts and all. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm hanging out with this guy. Now, the funny thing is that because it was a 12-step program, it was Joe P. and I was Tim R. And we
Mhm.
only knew each other as Joe P and Tim R for a long time and became really good friends. But that's kind of the thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And in fact, in 2010, we were sitting on the phone trying to figure out how to do a blog talk radio show about sex addiction with voice morphing software because we weren't ready to out
Mm.
ourselves at that point in
Yeah.
our recovery journey. So
Yeah.
we there, and we were like researching the software. So it would be like the witness, relocation program. Hi, my name is Bob, and I'm here to talk about sex addiction. And yeah, so we've been on this cosmic journey of recovery now since 2003. And what I didn't know about Joe is Joe was like a total misfit, total out of control addict in multiple behaviors and substances, massive ADD, and he's a self-made millionaire.
Mm.
So he dug himself out of like being like 120 pounds wet as while freebasing cocaine to becoming a super healthy, super impactful guy who helps people every day of the week all over
Yeah.
the world. And
Yeah.
he constantly inspires me to kind of push past my comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
and try something different,
Yeah.
and just try something different, and that I wouldn't be who I am today. I know I wouldn't be who I am today without two very specific people. One is my
Mm-hmm.
wife,
Yeah.
Angelique, and the
Mm-hmm.
other is my buddy Joe.
Yeah. Your story about him is actually the perfect lead in to the next question, which is, what is one lesson that you've learned from a perceived failure or a changed belief or habit? Because it sounds like Joe has just done that in spades. And I know that you have as well. So what
Mhm.
is one lesson that you've learned along the way, or a way that you've turned around a perceived failure or a changed belief or habit in your life?
Yeah, I think it's pronounced patina, which is the art of, what's the right word? Repairing pottery with
Mm-hmm.
gold
Yeah.
paint
Yeah.
that shows
Yep.
the cracks. So Joe was dating a gal named Renee at one point, and Renee had a talk called "Fix Your Flaws,"
Mm.
and she talked about, or "Flip Your Flaws," and
Mm.
she
Yeah.
talked about this idea. And this is like 2013, and I remember there's a point early in my recovery where I was in a 12-step meeting and someone said, "I'm blank and I'm a gratefully recovering sex addict." And I was like, who is grateful to be in this room? What the fuck are you talking about? What a jackass. Like, stop. There's no teacher. Stop kissing ass. Nobody
Yeah.
cares. Like, immediately I went into this just vitriol, right? And then about a nanosecond later, I got curious.
Mm-hmm.
What did this guy do internally to
Yeah.
get to a place where he could say authentically he was grateful to be in recovery from sex? What?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, you got my attention. And basically the idea was that I got to through Renee's Flip Your Flaws, this idea of patina, was like my journey through addiction
Mm-hmm.
allows, because you
Yeah.
can't throw a stick in our culture and not hit somebody who is either currently struggling,
Yeah.
has struggled, or will struggle. um, my personal experience now gives me a bridge into
Yeah.
connection
Yeah.
with millions of people,
Mm-hmm.
because the bridge is pain.
Yeah.
If you've had a particular pain, you want to talk to someone else who's had that same pain, because then you guys get it. You don't have to validate, you don't have to explain it, you don't have to justify it, you don't have to educate. You just immediately hit the ground running in connection, and you
Mm-hmm.
guys can, just brainstorm and share and go.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was like pain is the great bridge of the human experience. It's like, okay, I just realized that I can now connect with millions more people in the world than I even thought of before, in a really, really important way.
Yeah.
And that was the day I became a gratefully recovering sex addict.
Mm. Thank you for that. And I know that your sense of gratitude has stuck with me
Mm.
since I first got to know you. That is a piece of, when I think of you, one of the qualities of Tim Ringgold
Oh,
that
I
just has
appreciate that.
always, yeah, really resonated with me and stuck with me. Um, and I know for me, that's one of the ways that I continue to care for myself in the midst of everything going on. What are some of the other ways that you care for yourself, that we say self-care, but also community care and whatever that means for you? What does that look like in
Sure.
your life?
Well, let me touch on gratitude briefly,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like showers. Like just because you've showered once doesn't mean you're
Yes.
good. People really, it's like, yes, you need to hear about gratitude again. Yes, you who's listening to
Mm-hmm.
my voice right now, who just rolled your eyes, you particularly you, this is you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now, which is that gratitude is a muscle that you can build quite
Mm-hmm.
easily, but you
Yeah.
have to build it consciously.
Yes.
So Robert Cooper is this neuroscientist who focuses on productivity in the workplace. And I was at a one-day workshop with him in 2016, and where he described that the brain defaults to the negative out of,
Mm-hmm.
it's like an artifact of
Yeah.
survival. And
Yep.
so cool. Okay. He's like, there's no, if you find yourself focusing on negative events, that's not diagnostic criteria, people. He
No.
goes, that's brain by design.
Yes.
I was like,
Yes.
whoa, huh. And he's like, so if you want to build any muscle that's contrary to that, you got to do the work. You really have to put in the reps.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, all right. And I kept hearing about a practice of having a gratitude journal or having a gratitude practice nightly. And so I was like, all right, all right. And his telling that story validated what I found to be my own experience out of survival. So
Mm-hmm.
for the listener who doesn't know, my wife gave birth to our second daughter in 2009, who passed away in 2010
Yeah.
from a rare fatal childhood disease called epidermolysis bullosa, or EB for short. And I, like, immediately, when upon her being born, I started a blog because it was the only way to keep family and friends updated with all the
Yeah.
breaking
Yeah.
news, because so much was happening. And what I started writing was the good, the bad, and the providence story of the day. And the providence story of the
Mm-hmm.
day was like, where, as I believe, where is the hand of God in today,
Mm-hmm.
delightfully surprising me in ways I couldn't have anticipated.
Yeah.
And so, as our brains are, because I had that thought and
Yeah.
then began to look,
Mm-hmm.
I would, of course, see things in a certain light that would be consistent with that belief, because believing is seeing. So I would write about it on a daily basis. And as she went through a crazy bone marrow transplant, 99 days in the ICU, I'm the caregiver, and I'm writing the blog nightly. It became a practice to not finish writing until I was in a state of gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was like spiritual yoga. I just had to
Yeah.
work and work and work the day into a way in which I was grateful for the day, so I could go to sleep complete, because tomorrow was coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tomorrow's full, people. So it's waiting, right? So you need to be ready, right? Like, you can't bring yesterday into today. That's
Yeah.
tiring. So this idea of being able to complete the day
Yeah.
was practical. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
lofty,
Yeah.
or it was like survival. So I would go to bed complete every night, and then the next day would hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'd do the work, and then I'd go to bed complete. And the night she died, I got down on my knees. My practice was I would get down on my knees, and then I would, like, think about the day, and I would think of at least 3 things I was grateful
Yeah.
for. The night she died, I got down on my knees because that was a practice. It was automatic
Mm-hmm.
at that point.
Yeah.
And sure enough, all these things started
Yeah.
cascading in my consciousness for what I was grateful for from the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Jen, I had the experience of observing that happening while it was
Yeah.
happening, and having like a side conversation while it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wait a minute, quote unquote, this is the day my
Yeah.
daughter died, and
Yeah.
I'm filled with gratitude.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew. I was like, oh, that's why everybody says have a practice, because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's literally transformative.
Yeah.
Because the narrative is, there's nothing worse than the death of your child, blah blah blah, says people who have never lost their child.
Yeah.
They just pass
Yeah.
on the narrative from someone else. Have you lived it? No. Well, but it sounds terrible. Yeah. Well, how do you think humans handled the entire existence up until the polio vaccine and C-sections and antibiotics. How do you think we survived? How do you think we did that when child and maternal mortality was a everyday occurrence, people, right? So I'm like, I have a practice, and that practice transformed the night of my daughter's death. And then I was like, this stuff's like bulletproof. If it can do that, then what can it do on a daily basis?
Absolutely.
So that's my like thing to everybody. Like, you have a gratitude practice. Now I use a journal because I have written proof, and I find that that's a fun new way. And I had heard about it for a few years and I hadn't done it. And then someone gave me like the right size journal, and I was like, what am I going to do with this thing? Oh, I'll do that. And what's fun is, after having a traumatic brain injury in 2016, my memory is poor.
Yes.
So I'll go back and leaf through this journal, and it'll reconnect me with events that I otherwise had forgotten about. And then I'm blessed a second time.
Yeah.
And then here's the kicker. On New Year's Eve this past year, I did the math. Now, my practice is to put at least 3 things a night. So it's sometimes 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 3. There were over 1,000 things I was grateful for in 2020.
Yeah.
In the midst of the pandemic.
Yes.
And they were genuine things, right? And so I was like, my 2020 was awesome. Oh boy, I'm not sure if I can say that and not get, he's so tone deaf. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, no, I'm calling this out.
Yep.
So I took a risk, and I went out and I posted about this, and I said, listen, folks, having a practice changes the way life occurs. So it takes me 20 seconds, like 20 seconds. I barely break stride on my way into bed to do this. It is not time consuming, but it is game changing. So that's like, I could tell you about 20 other practices, including pickleball. And why it's good for my mental, physical, social, and spiritual health. But I wrote a blog post about it. Go to my website, read the blog post.
Exactly.
But if nothing else, have a gratitude practice. And then the second thing I will say is that you cannot have mental health without physical health. And there's a phrase that they who have their health have 1,000 wishes. They who don't have but one.
Yes.
And so, like, have a practice for how you treat your body, because how you treat your body is how you treat your mind. They're 2 sides of the same coin. How you treat your gut is how you treat your brain. And so, just like, I don't care where you are. I don't care where you've been. It's where you're going. And every day you have multiple opportunities to move your body, to fuel your body, and to rest your body.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the impact of those 3 things on your mental health or your spiritual health.
Absolutely.
Harumph.
Y'all can tell that Tim is a storyteller, and it's one of the things that I appreciate and value about you. Whose stories do you value? What are the books? What are the music that have influenced your life? Just a few of them.
Yeah, right. Gosh. So books without, here's what I'll do. I'll just start reciting book titles. So The Conversation with God, an Uncommon Dialogue series by Neil Donald Walsh was very impactful. The 4 Agreements. If you have a problem with a relationship, one of the agreements is out. It's just very simple. It's a very, very simple framework for managing relationships. The Work, Byron Katie, really, really good. The 4 Questions. Those all come to mind. I said that one. 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. Really, really powerful. And then there's like The Go-Giver, Bob Berg.
Yep.
So The E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber. these are more of the business side of things that are really helpful for people if you're going to swing out and not just own a job, but own a business. Really helpful. Last year, the book of the year was Breath by James Nestor. So fascinating, so powerful. Been really interested in breathing, and I've been exploring the work of Wim Hof for a while now. I've been taking cold showers, started taking ice baths. I did an ice lake plunge this winter, and I've just been exploring breath and cold exposure. And so Breath by James Nestor was definitely the book of the year. And for all you clinicians, which is probably all y'all, read Polyvagal Theory in Therapy by Deb Dana. Man, will that give you like a really fascinating framework around trauma and around your nervous system, because we don't get the proper training. We do not get the proper training on the nervous system and understanding how it works. I remember that we had one, and it went from you have one to here's a cell. That was like the level, right? Like it's like the macro, the micro, and you're looking at this cell, and it's got axons and dendrites and myelin sheath, and it's scary looking. It looks like a alien that's going to kill you, and you're like, can we go on to something else? I liked the other cell diagram with the mitochondria, and that was it. But when you read Polyvagal Theory in Therapy, you're just like, oh, that's why I am, and that's why he or she or they are. It's incredibly like illuminating, like personally as well as professionally. So,
how about some of the music that has influenced your life?
Music that's influenced my life. Steve Vai is my like spiritual musical guru. Dream Theater. Just the complexity of the tapestries that they weave are just beyond. And then go to see him live, and they execute this incredibly complex music, and it's beautiful, but it's incredibly complex, and it's flawless. I mean, they're like classical musician level trained, but they're rockers, and so you're just like, oh, this is so good. So I really enjoy that. I also really enjoy EDM and whatever it was called before that. All the way back to high school, Acid House, which shows my age. Go look it up in Wikipedia, kids. Acid House, what is that? But I have always been interested in altered states of consciousness, and I really enjoy altering my own states of consciousness. And EDM is one of those pathways, because there's some great actual research on this, but rhythmic music to induced altered states of consciousness, that we've been doing that as a species since time immemorial. So I remember being a raver back in the day, and really connected, like feeling like I was connected to thousands of years of ancestry. And I would call myself a cyber hippie. That was my nickname, because it was like really modern music, but it was very primal in what it was tapping into for me, this deep sense of connection as an animal. And I really enjoy music. Like I really like thinking about myself as an animal, and I know humans like to try to think of themselves above. There's some sort of bizarre thing we do where we try to like leave that conversation, but I'm like, no, you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. I shave the hair off my head and my face, but I am still a mammal. I'm still a pack animal, and music taps into the animal in me, and I enjoy that experience very much. I really like feeling alive in my body. And that's one of the reasons I'm so active as an athlete as well as an artist, because when I'm an athlete, I'm having this really powerful lived experience of being in my body and moving and executing things with my body at a very high level. And it's immensely fulfilling and satisfying, just like the experience of listening to music or making music. They're like side by side.
Yeah. So if you had a theme song, Tim Ringgold, what would it be?
Oh gosh, what would the theme song be? Oh man. I Will Survive. Gloria Gaynor. Definitely. because my mom will say her thing is Timmy, and she's the only one who gets to call me that. You have a way of always being able to land on your feet.
Mm.
And I appreciate it and resent it at the same time, because
Yeah.
there's part of me that doesn't want to have to be knocked down, like all of
Yeah.
us. Like, why do I have to
Yeah.
get knocked down again? Oh, because
Yep.
that's the game. And I don't remember where the proverb comes from. Fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Mm.
And that is how it works,
Yeah.
right? So what do I lean on? And then, it's funny, my mantra is, and I lean on you, you lean on me, and we don't keep score.
Mm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
community, right?
Yep.
That's what we have here. That's what you've created. And that's, as mammals and as humans, that's how we have
Yeah.
literally survived and thrived,
Yes.
is
Yep.
the distinction community. You do not do anything on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, just for a second, trying to imagine the number of hands that were involved in creating the experience we're having right now, and then
Mm-hmm.
flip that to the experience of the listener having the
Yeah.
experience of listening to our voices right now. So we're
Yeah.
both using these Blue Yeti mics. No idea who made them. No idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right? With pop filters and screens and computers and bandwidth and power. I'm reading a book right now called Adapt:
Mm.
Why Success Always Begins with Failure.
Ah.
And the first story is about a man who decided he wanted to try to build a toaster from scratch. Just a toaster, just, people, pardon my French, a fucking toaster. That's all it was, just a toaster. He's like, I'm going to build a toaster. And it was so immensely complex and
Yeah.
complicated. There are over 400 parts in a toaster, and he had to go like mine ore in order to do
Mm-hmm.
this, that, and the other thing. And it was so unbelievably expensive, time consuming. And when he built it and he plugged it in, it melted. And it was comedy, but
Yeah.
what it pointed out was that every single day
Mm-hmm.
we all lean on an
Mm-hmm.
immeasurable number of other human beings that we will never
Absolutely.
meet in
Yeah.
order to live the life that we live today. And so I lean on you, you lean on me, and we don't keep score.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
lean on me would be another, that's, I sing every time I finish a keynote, the
Mm-hmm.
whole audience is up. We're all singing Lean On Me.
Yeah.
Every time I do a curbside concert, which we've been doing, we did every week throughout the pandemic, and now we're doing a monthly. The whole neighborhood, we all sing and dance "Lean on Me" together. And I think that's a powerful. It was a very
Yeah.
powerful song in the last
Mm-hmm.
year. It
Yeah.
it it
Oh,
healed a
absolutely.
lot of people. So,
Mm-hmm. And just powerful, a powerful song and powerful wisdom,
yep,
to remember of that importance of community as literally an essential need for survival,
yes,
like food and
absolutely.
hydration and rest. Yeah, absolutely. What other wisdom or advice would you give to the students who are listening and studying music therapy right now?
Oh, this horrible experience you're having is time limited, so don't fret.
Yes,
Zero
my
joke.
no,
Zero
seriously,
joke.
yes. My
There's a
husband,
light at the end of the tunnel. It is
yes.
called MTBC. And once you get there, the whole game changes for the better. So just
Mm-hmm.
hang on. Don't quit. Don't stop. Get up. Do it again tomorrow. And good enough is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
No one's
Yes.
going to ask what your grade point average was.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
job interview ever asked my GPA, and no one in an interview asked me where I went to school.
Mm. Yeah.
The only thing that was ever any relevant was someone said, "What is your philosophy of music therapy?" I was like, "Oh, brother, here we go." They're excited to ask me that. Oh, I believe in eclectic approach, blah, blah, blah. But literally, I mean, like,
Yeah.
people fret over their grades. They fret, like, no, like,
Yeah.
if you need to sleep, sleep,
Yep. Yes.
go to
And
sleep.
by the way, you do need to sleep.
And you do. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Because your
Just
memory is
saying.
tied to your sleep.
Yes.
So don't stay
Yes.
up trying to study. You won't remember it. Just go to bed.
Yeah.
And if you can't get something done, here's a really good one. The moment you realize you can't get something done on time, just be in communication
Yeah.
with whoever it is
Mm-hmm.
that you are accountable to, whether it's a
Yes.
study partner or a professor, and then look honestly at when you 85%, 90% accurate, you can get it done by,
Mm-hmm.
and just promise to get it in by then, and then just deal with the consequences and just move on.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that in my internship, and Barbara Royer, my internship
Mm-hmm.
supervisor, was dumbstruck. She just looked at me. She goes, "How did you get through school?" I said, "Exactly how I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting through my internship. I'm in communication, in
Yep.
partnership with you. I have a
Yes.
family. And I told her, I said, for me, family first.
Yeah.
So Barb, if you've got like an assignment for me and I have a family obligation, I will be doing the family
Mm-hmm.
obligation every time,
Yep.
but I'll get to it, and I'll always let you know when I'll get it to you by, I promise."
Yeah.
And most people are blown away by that level of honesty,
Mm-hmm.
because most people just hide. They
Yeah.
hide out, and you have to go chase them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't hide.
Yeah.
Because all of us like get it wrong in terms of forecasting how much time
Mm-hmm.
and effort it's going to take to get stuff done.
Oh yeah.
So you're going to run into this at some point in your journey where you're like, the time's up and I'm not done. And so I got to I got to negotiate here and just say, "Hey, you know what? I'm not done. But here's when I will be done. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I can see at this point." Because I
Yeah.
couldn't see all these things until I got into it. Now that I'm into it, I can see. And that, as long as you're straight and like with people about that, like they'll really appreciate it.
Yeah. Great advice for students and professionals. Let's just be honest here for all of us.
Hopefully that's useful for everybody. But
Yes. So this is one of my favorite questions. What advice would you tell music therapy students to ignore? Because they get a lot of it.
oh, isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I'm trying to think of like what music, what advice you get that you should ignore. Hmm. How you, oh boy, how do I say this? I want to open a whole hornet's nest right now. I really do. Really do. Um, I don't know. I don't know, but here's my thoughts about like what I would like to say. This is what you should hear,
Mm-hmm.
music therapy students and professionals. Have the same level of grace for each other that you have for your clients.
Mm-hmm.
There is an unrealistic amount of expectation placed on
Yes.
peers, and I watch far too many music therapists just flaming and torching other music therapists.
Yeah.
There's not enough of us out there. We
Yeah.
really literally need each other, like every
Yeah.
one of us.
Yeah.
So if you want to fight, go fight someone outside of the music therapy community. Don't fight in
Mm.
the community. It's like there's no time. There's so much work. There is a shortage of music therapists.
Yeah.
There is a shortage. Let me say it like 4 more times. There's not a shortage of clients.
Yeah.
There is a shortage of
Yeah.
music therapists.
Yeah.
So don't worry. There is literally more people who need us
Oh,
than there
absolutely.
are us. It's
Yeah.
just up to us to be creative enough to structure our work in a way to where we can serve them, get
Mm-hmm.
paid, move on, but it's totally doable. And so like just yeah, be kind to
Yeah.
one another,
Yeah.
and know that there's more work than we could possibly
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. Is there any other wisdom from you or anyone else that you would like to share with us as we finish up today?
Yeah, volunteer. Volunteer at the state level, at the regional level, at the national level, so that you know what it takes to do all the things that are being done for you
Yeah.
that you don't like have any clue. You have no clue.
Yeah.
You have no clue.
Oh, yeah.
So like after 10 years of volunteering, like I get it, and so that's why I don't, shoot arrows, except I'm shooting
Mhm.
arrows at the people who shoot arrows. Ironic. It's so meta. I just used that phrase.
Nicely done.
I'm probably too old, but
We're the same age, so be careful
well,
there.
well, you didn't use it. I'm speaking for me. So, feel free to either use it or not, but yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, like that's just
yeah.
serve others, like really just serve,
Mhm.
volunteer. And that will help.
Yeah, everyone.
Yes,
Whose
everyone.
voice in music therapy would you like to amplify today? Who should we be listening to, reading, watching, paying attention to, learning from?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually have been like John the Baptist in the wilderness, actually out of the music therapy community for the
Yeah.
last 3 years, very purposefully. After I
Mm-hmm.
served for 10 years in the
Yeah.
community, I decided to go out into the world of where no one knows anybody and
Mm-hmm.
plant seeds about music therapy. So I'll be candid with you. I don't really know like who's doing what in the world, but I
Yeah.
will say that the names that come to mind, there's Kat McFerrin in
Yeah. Yes.
Australia,
Yep.
who's doing great research for adolescence and mental health and substance abuse. And since
Mm-hmm.
that's an area that's interesting, near and dear to my heart, and since she's down under, a lot of people in the States may not,
Yeah.
know who she is or what she's up to. So that would be somebody. And then I think the world of Daniel Goldschmidt and Brea Murakami, I think they're both
Mm-hmm.
rising stars in our
Yep.
field.
Yep.
So I think they're very thoughtful and they think well,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love my boy. Shout out to a couple of my boys because we're the minority. It's like as the middle-aged white guy, like I'm not the minority very often, but as a man in music therapy, we're the 13%. That's our joke. So Andrew Knight, much love to Andrew, Michael Silverman, Michael Viega, Kalani Das,
Mm-hmm.
Eric Mammon. Yeah, so I got to shout out my boys, Matt Logan. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I just love I love all those guys, and it's hard to be in Boy Scout mode at conferences, like guys are dumb, we all know, and so we have to be on like really good behavior. So when we have a table and you see us at a table and we're like telling the dumbest jokes in the room, and we're just like and we're just having our little moment where our Y chromosome is being expressed because it's just an incomplete X chromosome. We have 3/4 of the chromosomal material you have. So, we are at a deficit.
Tim. So, in our show notes, listeners will be able to find the links to buy your book and to download your relaxation vacation audio
Thank
file
you.
for free. How
Appreciate that.
else can folks connect with you if they would like to learn more?
Oh, yeah, timringgold.com. You can read about what I'm up to there. I'm on Instagram at Tim Ringgold. I'm on Facebook at Tim Ringgold. Follow my pickleball exploits and journey over there. Have a hobby, by the way, people. Have a hobby.
Yes.
Get outside. Do something that has nothing to do with music or music therapy. It's immensely restorative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I will say, I highly recommend signing up on Tim's website for his blog and for his regular emails. There is a lot of wisdom in those. And
Thanks.
I really appreciate the time and the intention that you
Yeah.
put into them. They are always very thoughtful and thought-provoking. And,
Cool.
And I value those a lot as well. So I highly encourage our listeners to check those out. Anything else you'd like to add as we finish today?
Just thank you for the work you're doing in the community, in the music therapy community internally. It's like as music therapists, we have like an arrow that's outward into the community and then inward into the professional community. So just big love to you for all the hard work that you do inside our community as well as outside in the community. So I just want to take this moment to lift you up.
Thank you, Tim. You're very
You're
welcome. And thank you again for joining us today. And thank you to all of the listeners as well. If you haven't already done so, please make sure to subscribe to this MT Mentor podcast so that you don't miss an episode. And if you want to dive deeper into some of these practices, you can also learn about and join our private membership group at joyfulnoisesllc.com/MT-mentor. That's JOYFULNOISESLLC.com/MT as in music therapist -MENTOR. All music therapy students and professionals are welcome, and equity-based pricing is available. Subscribe to this free MT Mentor podcast and join our membership group today. MT Mentor. Let's fill our cups and share our wisdom together.